Big price changes, the turbo Leclerc problem, and more stat secrets here on the pit wall. Welcome, I'm J-Jack, and let's go. Let's start off by announcing the big changes by PlayON, no longer having player-driven sentiment tracking. There was a big issue of a purported hackerman, which had thousands of bots that were able to pump the market going up or down. PlayON tried various things, freezing the market, changing how many substitutions need to happen before sentiment would go up and down. But now they've just taken off the board and PlayON is handling the changes of prices. And let's kick it over so you can see how big these changes are. Just notice how Alonso going $0.4 million change, Gasly $1.3 million, Hamilton 4.1, Latifi 0.8, Leclerc 1.5, Norris 0.4, Perez 1.2, Ricciardo down 4.3 million. You just keep on going and going. You see these big changes all because of PlayON. Over the constructors, our biggest losers like AlphaTauri 1.8, biggest gainers like Ferrari 1.9, and Red Bull 3 million. But look at that big haul I had by having Red Bull on our team. I took a before and after screenshot of my spreadsheet. Link is in the description below, but it just goes to show you how things have changed over the time, right? Hamilton was the most expensive driver, 30.6 million. He's now dropped to 26.5, and Verstappen is now the top most expensive driver. And you can look here on the left, you can pause, or you can see how these things shake up. You had all these drivers that were within 0.3 million of each other, which is the yellow highlights. And then here on the right, those groups have all shifted. There's a big group here at the bottom. Magnussen, Latifi, Schumacher, and Tsunoda are all your cheapest driver options. Where Tsunoda before was 8.4 million. So now you can have better pricing, which now goes us to the value of the drivers. Leclerc 1.5 million has now changed to 1.4. Very similar. But if you look at the value estimation, whereas we had Leclerc, Perez, and Verstappen value to cost, they've now dropped the prices or raised prices for drivers to even these all out. Leclerc still is at 2.1%, but then you only have Perez, Sainz, Verstappen in the high 1 points. And then Russell, 1.5% is now down to 1. And then you get a lot of these drivers that are now near to how much they're supposed to cost, or like Hamilton now, he is way too expensive for the price output or the value that he's going to provide for your team. You see a similar thing happening with our constructors. Red Bull, pretty much the slam dunk option with 5.2% value estimation dropped down to 3.3, and then Ferrari from 3.7 to 2.4. Those are still the two options to go between them. And well, we might as well talk about it now. Red Bull is eligible for a race streak plus 10 points. Ferrari is looking pretty strong. Are they going to score more than the 10 points that would allow you to continue having Red Bull, especially with the huge increase of price? Red Bull with a $3.2 million increase, Ferrari with a 2.7. So if you had Red Bull over the last couple weeks between Italy and here, you would gain about $500,000 more. Looking at our streaks, Leclerc with that race streak of plus 10 points, and then that's the only driver. The constructors, Red Bull can get the race streak, and the Mercedes can get their power streak of plus 15. I don't see Mercedes getting that extra 5 points over Red Bull, making them worth, considering how expensive they still are at 33.8 million. But you could say now Mercedes is cheaper than Red Bull, which is before not the case. But you have to think in the future. Is Red Bull going to gain more money than Mercedes, which keeps losing money? And that's why I'm going to not pick up Mercedes at this time unless suddenly they start going up in price, because you don't want to get locked into a negative value for your teams. Leclerc. He's got that race streak plus 10 points, and this is now why we want to be interested in Leclerc. You see here, he's listed at 20.2 million. The rules dictate that you can only turbo driver who is less than 20 million. Uh-oh, what do we do? What do we do about Leclerc? Okay, the rules are very clear. I'll try to make it clear to you as well. If you had Leclerc select as your turbo going into this race week, then you are fine turboing him. As soon as the race is over, if he maintains above 20 million, it's going to kick you off that turbo and you're going to need to select someone else. In this case, Sainz or Perez. I would probably trust Sainz more than Perez because of how he's been driving recently. And when we get to the driver chart, you'll see that Perez is kind of off the pace here at Singapore. If you have not selected Leclerc and then he ticks over 20 million, now you're stuck. And that's why we want to compare the drivers of who you want to turbo and who would be that option. Like I said, Sainz is looking much better here at Singapore, but let's now go and see how our free practice session 1 and 2 were looking. I've added some more data to the spreadsheet. You can see now the tires, and why I'm highlighting the tires is because there was a lot of drivers not on softs in free practice session 1. So let's highlight Stroll from 145. He got in the 143s, but lost positions from 8th down to 10th. Vettel only gained a second when he went from mediums to soft. Alonso gained 2 seconds from mediums to soft, same as Bottas, and Bottas got the greatest jump, even going faster than Alonso. So Bottas is one to look at. Then you've got someone like Hamilton, who in free practice session 1 set a 143 and set a 143 a little bit slower in free practice session 2, and boom, now he's 5th fastest. So you see how all these other drivers are getting faster and faster. But then you have a guy like Perez, who's 4th fastest in free practice session 1, and then in free practice session 2, he's only 9th fastest. And this is the problem. In free practice session 2 is the best indicator of how qualifying is going to be. And if there's all these walls with everyone touching and everyone having problems, and Perez cannot get high enough, he's going to have a hurt of a race. But Singapore is pretty much guaranteed to get a safety car. There's just always a crash, there's always something happening, and if you have the right pit stop or lucky for the virtual safety car, the safety car coming out, you can gain positions. Question is Perez going to get stuck in one of these DRS trains or anybody else that you have on your team? Because if they get stuck, then their tires aren't going to be able to give them the advantage that they want. If you can't turbo Leclerc, who do you go with? And at this point, it's looking like Sainz is the guy, because Leclerc's too expensive if you haven't turboed him already for this race. And of course, you won't be able to have him for next race, so you want to have somebody on your team for next race. And then Verstappen's too expensive, Hamilton's too expensive, Russell's too expensive. Ocon, maybe. Let's go back to the Google sheet and see how he looks. Ocon, he is 7th fastest here on the right. Yeah, he's going to be cheaper than Perez, but like when you can just turbo Sainz, that's seeming like the better option. Now going down to constructors, you can see that Ferrari is looking best, then Mercedes and Red Bull. Also recognize that Verstappen only did 8 laps in free practice session 2. So that is something interesting that's going on there. We have Alpine, who both got new floors, and you can see that paid off with their relative speed. And then you have someone like Gasly, who had his air box catch fire. He's down in 12th. And then you have a lot of cars that keep touching the walls. Both Aston Martins are doing that. You're having Russell, who kept having lockups. And so that's something they'll have to figure out. The big problem is when you've got your guys like your McLarens, who seem really off the pace compared to your Alpines. And why is that important? Because when we get to my teams, we'll see what I have to deal with. Last thing before we get to my teams, recognize, yes, weather is going to play a big part potentially in this race. I always hate it when the commentators are like, it looks like it's going to be like rain. There's this nice shot that they have at the Marina Bay where it looks like condensation can come down. But actually, if you're looking here, over the course of quali and on the race, you do see the precipitation going up as high as 76% throughout the day. On Sunday, you have it just as high. And so if there is going to be rain, I don't believe I've ever seen rain at Singapore live during the race that's going to impact it. So it's going to be interesting if it's not only a street circuit with tight walls, crashes, but also wet tire conditions. That will be very fascinating, especially since the teams don't have any data for that. If it starts raining and then it stops raining just enough for guys to go from wets to inters, and then you could have a huge change up of the order. So keep track of that. And also keep track of which driver you think is going to keep it out of the barrier. Because if they're in the barrier, you're not going to get the points that you need. I'd like to promo for you our one race challenge code on the screen and the description below. Your one team submission for your one opportunity to get on our one race challenge or ORC leaderboard. You can find that in our spreadsheet. I also post the results on Twitter as well in our Discord. And so what we do is the top 3 positions get gold, silver, bronze, 25, 18, and 15 points. We take base points, which means that turbo drivers are eligible. Mega drivers, we don't take that multiplier, just the base points. And the top positions in our league are all separated by about 5 points. So it's really cool to see all you guys joining. And if we can get at least 50 of you to join, we can be eligible in the large leagues. The last couple races, mainly because of the schedule of my videos, we haven't got 50, but that's fine because I want all of you who want to participate to enjoy yourself and have fun. But if we can get a part of the large league average, it would be great, because in Italy, we got 5 out of 5 large leagues on that. That's never happened before. I'd love to be able to continue it because you guys are awesome. Looking at my teams, I did not do any substitution, so I've got 3 to use. I had 109 million on team 1, 108 million on team 2 because of now PlayON's new sentiment with their injection. It's 114 and 113, still about a million between the two, and roughly 100 points between my two teams down to my Mega Drive. Because I didn't change my lineups, Turbo Driver Leclerc is still locked in, but like I said, if you can't turbo him because he got over that 20 million, Sainz is looking like the really good option here. Then, as you notice, Norris and Alonso both dropped 0.4 million. No, I didn't gain or lose between these two drivers, but because of how bad Norris and Ricciardo are looking at this track, I am electing not to keep Norris. So look at my budget of 15.7 million. What do we got here? Okay. So I could afford, Ocon is looking sharp, and then that gives me 3.4 million if I don't want Magnussen, and I want someone like Bottas, hoping that Bottas is not going to have his problems again, then I can afford him with 0.2 million left over. But notice that Magnussen didn't drop in any value over the last few races. Bottas only dropped by 0.2 and Ocon did not. So this would be interesting that this combination could be pretty stable as long as these 3 guys and Red Bull continue being the moneymaker. Of course, getting the race streak for both Leclerc and Red Bull, really good options. Team 2, Alonso is probably in the same boat actually, because while Alonso was looking good, he's losing value compared to someone like Ocon. So if I were to drop him because of that $1 million difference, then I'm pretty much locked into the same boat. Whereas 8.6, I can't even afford Bottas and I can't even afford Stroll. Probably would be better to either only switch out Ocon, but actually let's look at the bottom, right? Latifi, nope. Schumacher, Magnussen are pretty much the same price. Sonoda. Sonoda. Let's see how Sonoda was doing. Sonoda was looking garbage, average 16th position, and he was in the bottom 4 in FP2 and in the bottom 5 in FP1. Yeah, Sonoda's probably not going to be worth it, especially if you think that Magnussen might be able to beat Schumacher, which Gasly usually beats Sonoda. And so those are my teams. Put it in the comments below. Let me know, who are you thinking about? You're like, well, it doesn't seem like you made any big changes. Well, I've got the best 3 out of the 4 drivers, and I have a budget that's stonks, and so I can afford making 1 or 2 switches. If you got the questions, you just send them my way, and let's see how it goes. You can join the conversation in Discord, a great, amazing community. Love to have you a part of it. Thanks for staying to the end. Here's the secret. Psst. Paola's getting married on Sunday. Put it in the chat below. Woo! And then my brother, he's graduating from Air Force basic training this week as well. Put that in the comments below. Give them both love. Means that I'm going to have to put out a video saying that I won't be able to do anything for the Japanese Grand Prix. I really love that race, but I'm going to be on the road. And so until next time, I'll see you on the pit wall.